The following feature presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
It's a Neverland clubhouse, yeah. Think of all that we will share. Disney updates and fandom will take you everywhere. It's Courtney and Kelly, two sisters that will be together. Oh, join our Neverland clubhouse, yeah. Two is twice as nice as one. Memories of friends and family, everybody is welcome. It's Courtney and Kelly, two sisters guiding you through Disney together, yeah.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our third episode of the Neverland Clubhouse. This is the Disney podcast where we will go to different parklands to share Disney stories, news, and what's going on with Disney+. We are your tour guides through Disney fandom. I'm Kelly, and this is my sister Courtney.
Hi, everyone, and happy holidays. In every episode, we'll go to a different land or two, or maybe even three. In the Hollywood backlot, we'll discuss and review Disney movies and TV. In Tomorrowland, we'll give you an update about the park and news and upcoming attractions. When we go to Main Street, we'll even help you navigate Disney parks and give our tips and tricks.
Yes, there's so much to share today, and we have a special Christmas treat for you as we will be interviewing our good friend, Drew Hayashida, who has been a cast member of the Disneyland Resort and was part of the stage production of Mickey's Nutcracker from the early 90s.
We will also be reviewing the latest Disney Channel original movie, Upside Down Magic. And stay tuned as there just might be a giveaway involved. Okay, so let's get this party started and hop into Santa's sleigh and head into the parks where our first stop will be the Hollywood Studios backlot for our review of Disney Channel's new original movie, Upside Down Magic.
So today we will be reviewing Upside Down Magic, which is a live-action Disney Channel original movie, which is out right now. It's also available on DVD with bonus behind-the-scenes material. Disney was kind enough to provide us a copy to review for you today, as well as one for us to give away to one lucky listener. Stay tuned for more details after our review. Upside Down Magic is an enchanting twist on a classic story of friendship and self-discovery. When a 13-year-old girl named Nori discovers she can flux into animals and best pal Raina can manipulate flames, they enter the Sage Academy for Magical Studies. But Nori's wonky magic and tendency for turning into a Dritten, which is a half-kitten, half-dragon, lands her in a class for those with unconventional powers, and she and her classmates must prove that their upside-down magic beats right side up.
So watching this movie, I definitely got some Harry Potter vibes, which I think they were going for, because they did have 4 different houses that they were separated into. They could be a flyer, a fluxer, a fuzzy, or a flicker, or a flare, which are all different powers. So I know that they were going off of that. And I really did like the way that they sorted the kids into the house, or the special fields of their ability. They had them do a specific task. The only thing I wasn't crazy about is that if they did if they didn't meet the specific task, then they got a card that said they were UDM, which means their magic was upside down and that they didn't fit in to these different 4 houses. I wasn't crazy about that.
Well, for the UDMs, they think that they're dangerous because in the past they're more susceptible to turning to the shadow magic, which ends up kind of being the evil part of the story. And they don't think that they're very teachable because they have like something wrong with their magic is what they think.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but I do like that the message out of that is that like they can overcome that and still be useful and be teachable, that they can learn to use their magic right. And I think that's really the message of the story, even though that they spent a lot of time on them not being able to do things right.
And not being perfect.
the right way, or the sage way is what they call it, the sage way, which is the school. Yeah. But I did like the acting of Vicki Lewis. I thought she was very good at playing basically the antagonist. She wasn't really an evil character, but she wasn't a good character either, because the sage way is not really
the way.
Yeah. Little Mandalorian in there. But it just, I felt like it was very one-dimensional on that particular point. You know what I mean? But the kids, I liked their growth of like, hey, cool, I have these awesome powers, and then them finding out, oh, but they don't match the other kids' powers. What's wrong with me? But then trying to get around and be like, but I can still do great things with this, even though it doesn't match.
Well, I liked the friendship between Nori and Reina because apart, they didn't really seem to function very well. But I do think this age group is like, you know, preteen, kind of like those 10 to like 15-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like it's a middle school movie. Definitely that age range, maybe like 5th grade to middle school, that preteen age. Yeah.
And like Nori and Reina, they kind of needed each other, or at least Reina needed Nori, because Nori always like was kind of like her hype girl, like, you can do it, you can do it, always telling her that she's amazing. And then when Reina didn't have that, it was almost like she was self-conscious about everything and didn't really
and then that's where all her spells went wrong, you know.
Yeah, so then all of her stuff went wrong, and then they had to come back together to kind of find where their magic truly like was a groove and was good.
Do you think it was for like they're trying to make it into a franchise?
Yeah, I think they're looking for their next franchise. I don't know where they would be going from there.
Well, I don't want to give away the end, but they do leave it open for a second movie. So,
of course, yeah, because they're always looking for that next movie franchise. But I don't think that there would be anything that they could go from where it ended.
Especially since they were trying to focus so much on friendships, like between these two girls and all the UDMs.
So on a scale of like A to F, where would you grade this movie?
I would give it like a C-, because I feel like they were trying too hard to be Harry Potter, but they definitely had some good things in the movie, but I feel like it wasn't like the old 90s DComs where like it wasn't Brink. Okay, Brink is one of the best Disney Channel original movies, and it wasn't Brink.
It's true. It wasn't there, and it wasn't like High School Musical where there was like catchy music and like a good soundtrack and like a good foundation on it. But the one thing I will say and was hilarious about this movie is the teacher, the UDMs. Kyle Howard played Mr. Scriff,
yeah.
He was hilarious. Like him as the teacher, he was, well, we don't really want to give him away, but he ends up being a teacher of the UDMs, and he really helped the UDMs find their confidence with their magic, but only after they helped him.
Yeah, I feel like he was definitely a highlight of the movie.
He was just all around funny, I thought.
Yeah. All in all, this movie is definitely worth watching. And now we are doing our first giveaway. You can win a DVD of Upside Down Magic.
We will be doing this giveaway on our Instagram at Neverland Clubhouse Pod. Please follow our account and like the Upside Down Magic post and leave a comment on which power you would like to have. Your choices are Fluxer, when you turn into animals, a Fuzzy, you can talk to animals, a Flicker, you can move things with your mind, a Flare, you set things on fire, a Flyer, where you can hover off the ground, or you might just be a UDM and have Upside Down Magic.
You have from today until January 13th to enter to win your very own copy DVD copy of Upside Down Magic with bloopers, bonus content, and more. And we will announce the winner on our next episode. Good luck, everybody.
Well, that was so much fun. And now we're going to hop on over to Disneyland and head to the Fantasyland Theater, where we will meet up with our good friend Drew Hayashida to discuss his involvement with the 1990s Christmas show, Mickey's Nutcracker. Drew was a dancer and performer in the show and worked very closely with one of the characters.
Mickey's Nutcracker was a live stage show that played during the Christmas season at the Fantasyland Theater stage between 1991 and 1992. In this retelling of the Nutcracker, Minnie throws a Christmas party in which she receives a magical nutcracker that resembles Mickey Mouse. When the clock strikes midnight on Christmas Eve, the Nutcracker comes alive and takes Minnie on a journey to Candyland. This colorful show includes live performers as well as other lovable Disney characters such as Goofy, Roger Rabbit, Tigger, Chip and Dale, and Pluto.
This stage production was filmed and televised for Disney Channel back in the 90s. Growing up, we watched this over and over again, even when it wasn't Christmas time. Please join us as we reminisce and learn more about our favorite show from our good friend Drew Hayashida.
Christmas bells, ring out your invitation. Join hands and celebrate at Minnie's house on Christmas Eve. Warm hearts and glad Noels to lift the celebration. Come now and don't be late to Minnie's house on Christmas Eve.
So we are sitting here with our good friend Drew Hayashida, who was a Disneyland cast member for 14 years, and was an entertainment cast member when they did Mickey's Nutcracker back in the 90s. So welcome, Drew.
Hello, Drew.
So good to see you guys and listen to you guys.
Good to see you.
Yes.
Good to see you too. It's been quite a while.
It has been, that's true.
Yes, how quarantine's been tweeting you.
What my standard statement is, I'm hanging in there like everybody else. I consider it the worst Groundhog Day movie ever, where I'm not learning. In the movie Groundhog Day, Bill Murray's character actually learns things. I haven't learned a darn thing during this entire time, but I'm still here, and as you can see, I'm growing a beard and long hair and everything. This is my stay-at-home growth. That's the only accomplishment I've made.
Well, I think we're kind of in that same boat too, just kind of going along and same thing every day, not really learning much.
Hanging in there.
Except had a podcast.
Nice.
So we're here to talk about Mickey's Nutcracker. And this was a show in Disneyland. It did 2 years, 1991, 1992. Now, the way that me and Courtney found this show was we had gotten videotapes from our grandmother who videotaped the Disney Channel when it was still a subscription and it was not free.
Because she got it and we didn't. Yeah, she got it, we did not.
And she video recorded this Mickey's Nutcracker stage production on the Disney Channel and sent it to us. And we were obsessed with this show. And I can't believe we found somebody who actually did it.
About it. Because when we talk about it, nobody knows what it is. They're like, they know the Nutcracker, but they've never heard of Mickey's Nutcracker. So we're glad to know that you were in it.
I was.
Yes, that's amazing. And this follows Minnie as kind of the Clara character, and Mickey is the Nutcracker that she gets on Christmas Eve. They're having a big party. There's a bunch of characters. And it's like a half-hour show that premiered on Disney Channel televised. But this was actually a show at Disneyland that was filmed. I'm so excited to get to talk to you about this because I loved this show. This was my Christmas staple. I loved it.
It's an incredible show.
So
we have some questions for you.
Please.
Yes. And first off, we want to get to know you a little bit. So, how did your journey start with Disneyland as a cast member?
The short version, because 14 years, I could talk for the next hour just about my journey. But I started in food service a long time ago, because I don't want to feel my age. I'm an old guy. But I started a long time ago at Disneyland in food service. And then I transferred to entertainment, which is where I did, amongst other things, I was part of the Mickey's Nutcracker show. After that, I opened Interventions as a ring show performer. So I actually did shows as dad. We had mom, dad, daughter, son, grandma, grandpa characters. And we all talked about how technology can help you in your life. And then when California Adventure opened in 2001, I did a show called Drawn to Animation, where we talked to Mushu the Dragon about how we create Disney characters. And then I was part of the Disney University, where I did training and development for the Disneyland Resort and its cast members. And that actually, so that was 14 years. And then I ended up working at the Walt Disney Studios in that same capacity as a learning and development person. I left the company for a short period of time, and now I am an official Walt Disney Studio Lot Burbank tour guide. So that's how you guys know me, is because of that. So yeah, I have such fond memories of the Mickey's Nutcracker show. It was my favorite show that I ever got to do when I was in entertainment.
That's amazing. And yes, the tour guides are so interesting as well. That's incredible.
One of the main perks of being a D23 member.
I wish we could have gone to the Light Up the Season this year. That's always our favorite. And we had so much fun with you last year. So did you always want to be involved in the entertainment department? Did you work in any other departments? Of course, you touched upon the other departments a little bit, but did you always want to do the entertainment side?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm from the Bay Area. I was born and raised in Berkeley, actually, and I moved down to Southern California to get into the entertainment industry. I just didn't know in what capacity I would. So when I ended up working at Disneyland and I worked in food service first, I thought that I was never going to be in entertainment. And then I auditioned for the entertainment department with a friend of mine who thought for sure he was going to get in, and I was just there to help him out. And I ended up getting the job and he didn't. And
oh wow,
yeah, believe it or not,
seems like that's always the way it goes.
Right, we're still friends. Like I thought he'd hate me after that, but he didn't. But I was in the entertainment department for 8 years. It was 8 wonderful years. I worked very closely with the characters in particular, and I actually did several shows for the entertainment department. And I was in Plain Crazy, which was a Disney afternoon show that was just before Mickey's Nutcracker. And I also did the opening ceremony for the Rose Bowl for the 40th anniversary of Disneyland.
Oh my gosh.
And I did a Toontown show. When Toontown first opened, we did this, what we called the dip show, because if you remember from Roger Rabbit, the dip is what killed all the characters. So there was a machine that Judge Doom put out there, and we had a volunteer kid come up and help destroy the dip so that the characters would live and all that kind of stuff. So I did several shows and performances when I was there. Again, mostly with the characters, which was just an amazing experience. Yeah. So
I'm sure I went to Disneyland at that time, but it was that like late 80s or early 90s, or
mostly the
right
90s.
Before Mickey.
Mostly the 90s. So I started in the entertainment department about 91. So it was a little bit shy of a year that the Disney afternoon was in the Small World Mall, if you remember that. So that was before Toontown. And I actually worked there for the first year or so and during that time is when I got to do Plain Crazy, which led to Mickey's Nutcracker.
Wow. Wow. That's
I wish I would have remembered the dip show.
That was a fun show, man.
And my favorite movie is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So I
love the show was great. We had several characters in that show, and the Dapper Dans, who played kind of like police, or I don't know what, the Toontown kind of helpers. And we had Chip and Dale. We had
it was kind of like the like mafia bosses. Like I don't know. They were
They were
always
the
wearing
good guys. No,
suits and
the
stuff.
Dappers were.
They were the
Yeah.
the
And
guys.
it's interesting. Judge Doom never made an appearance, but the truck. So he made this truck that had the dip in it that was timed, supposedly timed. So eventually, it was just going to blow up. It was going to destroy all of Toontown and all the characters in it. But we needed a kid to come up to hit the right levers to stop the machine from going, and that's what the Dappers helped us do. But again, we had all these other fun characters, talking and singing, and it was just a quick little, I'd say 7-minute show. It was the fastest little thing.
Oh, okay.
And it was.
Would you acquaint that to like the Sword in the Stone? Merlin calling up somebody and pulling out because I remember the Merlin show where they pulled up the sword out of the stone, and you were kind of like, they would say that you were like king of the day, but then they'd be like, oh no, you can't do that. You never have time to put your proclamation.
Quick, make a wish, and then it was like you didn't have time to make a wish.
Exactly.
Essentially, it was the same thing. It was just a much more elaborate show around this idea. And the kids got this really cool Toontown key. So I think when you pulled the sword out of the stone, you got a document or something proving that you did it. For us, you got this huge, it was a real metal key that we did. And we did, I think, 5 performances in a day. And so we gave out 5 keys a day to these kids, and it was always such a fun thing. I think it was more fun for the guests than for us, because Toontown's very hot. It's very like asphalt, and the sun just hits there for some reason, and there's no wind or anything. But yeah, I actually have fond memories of that particular show as well. I mean, I did some really, really fun stuff, but that was a fun show to do too.
Yeah, that does sound really, really fun. I wish I could have gotten one of those keys.
Right? Right? I wonder how much it's worth on eBay. I should look it up and see if they're worth any money.
Oh, is there one on eBay? I don't know.
I'm sure everything's on eBay.
Everything's on eBay.
Right?
So you obviously had to audition for Mickey's and Nutcracker. What role did you want to get?
When I was in entertainment, one of the great things about being in entertainment and auditioning for these shows is that if I didn't get the part, then I'd still have a job. So that was one of the nice things. I was just happy to audition for anything. To be honest, I don't feel like I'm the best dancer or anything, really. I'm a good performer. I have a lot of energy, and I think those are my assets. But in terms of actual technical dancing ability, I think I'm not as good as other people, but I think I'm capable, and I knew the directors because of Playing Crazy. They were the same directors for Playing Crazy. They were Rob Roth and Matt West. So Rob Roth was the director, and I think he was one of the show writers, and Matt West was the choreographer. Understand that they started just a few years before for a show called Calling Dick Tracy. So they did that show first for the Disneyland Resort. And then they did Playing Crazy, and then Mickey's Nutcracker, and then they created the Beauty and the Beast show for Disneyland, which is different than the Florida Beauty and the Beast show. So I had already had a pretty good relationship with them because of Playing Crazy. So even they could see, like, even if I wasn't the best dancer, they knew they could direct me. So I was just happy to be in any show. I mean, certain people, of course, wanted particular parts, but I was fortunate, to do what I got to do. Yeah.
How was the audition process like?
It's I would imagine it's like almost any audition. It's usually more than a day. It was a couple of days. They teach you a bit of choreography. You have a very limited time to learn it, and they need to see how you move. And because we're portraying different kinds of characters, they needed to see personality within the dancing and the movement. So there was a movement part of the audition as well. So it was all those kinds of things. And it was 2 days. So the first day there was a cut. And then the second day, those were left, there was a cut after that. And they had 3 casts. There was an A, B, C cast. So the A cast would be 5 days. So you would only have 1 cast per day for the most part. You wouldn't have like 2 casts in a day unless it was like, a Saturday or something where there was, more shows in the afternoon. For the most part, though, it was only just 1 cast that day. So there was 1 cast that would for sure do 5 days. The B cast would do 4 days, or they were sub in case an A cast member was out. And then the C cast followed up, and they would probably do 2 or 3 days a week. But would fill any spots that were available that the A or B cast couldn't do. So that's kind of how it worked. So we had, I think, 3 complete casts.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. That's awesome. I want to know, were you in the televised production of Mickey's Nutcracker?
As you can imagine, that would be the A cast. No, it was the A cast. But I do remember talking to my colleagues and friends when they were shooting it, and they said it was grueling because they actually shut down the theater for 2 days so they could do this shoot. It was early on in the season, so it didn't really interrupt the guest experience, it's always key for the Disneyland Resort. But it was 2 days, and just like any film, you do 1 take of this or 2 takes of that. And you can actually watch Mickey's Nutcracker in pieces on YouTube, because I had looked it up recently, in varying degrees of quality, because just like you guys said, it ended up on Disney Channel. My hope is eventually it'll show up on Disney Plus, but who knows?
I'm crossing my fingers on that one, Drew.
I think it would be a great holiday thing. I'm sure there are reasons why it's not there yet, but because it was a Disney Channel program, I can't imagine why it wouldn't eventually show up on Disney Plus, but I don't know. But it was just like any production. I mean, Hamilton, not to compare it to Hamilton, which is like, Hamilton is awesome, but
right.
But, you do a take and that doesn't work, and you got to do retake, and it depends on if the director likes it or not, and the angles and the lighting was right, or if one of the performers, maybe makes a misstep or whatever. So it was really long days for them, but they put in their all, and I think that they captured the show really, really well. I mean, they just did an extraordinary. There's a reason why they were the A cast. They were just all amazing.
Yeah, I remember laughing, being really excited, and I thought the show was just a wonderful show, really well written. For a kid's perspective, like for me to understand it and be obsessed with it, like when I was that little, I thought it was an amazing show, and like I still to this day remember everything really vividly about the show. And
because I think for a long time, like this was our only introduction to the Nutcracker. I mean, we were dancers, and obviously we knew what the Nutcracker was, but like really our introduction to the Nutcracker was through Mickey's Nutcracker. So we thought that like all of those numbers had songs, lyrics to it, the lyrics, where in the Nutcracker, they don't have lyrics to them.
One of the things that I think was clever about the show, and one of the reasons why I think it's special, is that they wrote, if you listen, and I think you guys recognize this, but each Tchaikovsky piece was themed to a different style. So you had the Broadway, the Snowflake Queen, the Broadway style.
Under December skies, weatherman says run for cover. There is no moon out, nothing to tune out. Passionate gazes from a young lover. Under December skies, no twinkling stars to distract you. As it gets colder, aim for a shoulder. Cuddle and hold her till you lose that chill. 'Cause though it snows in winter,
the 3 performers who were the Snow Queens were just some of the most, not only the most talented people I've ever met, but like the sweetest people, the biggest hearts that I've ever known. And I was so pleased to have gotten to know them at all. But that was like big Broadway, and then they had kind of a Western.
She was
thing.
hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, there was each thing. There was a rap. The rap, that was the one part I wasn't sure was going to work with the rap.
Rap was just getting started at that point.
It was weird, So I was like, all right, but you know what? It works for what it is. You know what I mean? Like, okay, sure,
Listen to my chatter and dig the rhyme of the Rat King rapping about my evil pastime. 'Tis the season, that's the reason for this ultimate crime. We're gonna wipe out Christmas time. We're wrapped on a mission to search and destroy. I'm wishing to besmirch this time of joy, and I think I'll start with this Nutcracker toy.
Who vaguely resembles a certain mouse boy.
But if there's one thing I can't stomach more than cute little mice,
It's sugar and spice and everything nice.
As a Disney person, hearing the different kinds of music that they're doing, it was kind of, I mean, Mickey's Nutcracker, a little bit edgy at times. Wow, because the rats aren't nice people at all. Like, there's very few redeeming qualities about the characters, those characters. But, of course, we learn more about the Rat King. But yeah, it was a little jarring. Like, wow, this is kind of edgy, man, But it made it fun.
Yeah, you were rapping the Rat Kings.
Yeah.
they're tying up the narrator.
Right, yeah. Those narrator guys too, they were super fun, man. They just
Yeah.
they were just really, in fact, on one of the YouTube videos focuses on one, I think it was the Acast narrator, and I knew him personally during those 2 years, and he was just a funny guy. He also could do because he was a little bit heavy set, so he loved to do Oliver Hardy, and he actually had a Stan Laurel. So outside of that, he would perform sometimes Laurel and Hardy, and he showed me a bit of that, and I was like, wow, that's a very good Oliver Hardy that you did.
Well, my favorite thing about the show is that it brings such a mixture of different characters together. Like, Roger Rabbit's there, Tigger's there. Like, it's such a mixture of the characters, and that is, as a kid, I was like, oh, they all hung out, like they're friends.
Yeah, it was different from, like, I think at the time we were closely watching like Mickey's Christmas Carol, where most of it is about the Fab Five. Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Daisy, and Sensational Six with Daisy and Pluto and Goofy. But so it was nice to see Mickey's Nutcracker utilize Roger Rabbit and Tigger and all those other characters that's in there besides the Fab, the core 6 or 5. But even though Donald and Daisy is not in the show.
Yeah.
Actually, that's interesting. I never thought about the fact that Donald is not in this particular production. That's wild.
Right?
I never thought about
not
that.
in it.
Yeah,
Chip
it's
and
not
Dale
like
and
a mixture of characters you see together a lot. It's just like this weird mixture of just characters at Minnie's house party.
Well, it's one of the Matt and Rob, the director and choreographer. I mean, if you watch Playing Crazy, and they really like to mix things up. They were from outside of Disney, so they didn't feel as constrained by what we consider the Disney rules. I mean, they had to get approvals, obviously, but they really like to push things as much as they could, because they were proper sort of stage writers and directors and things like that. And that's how they approach stuff. It was interesting because they'd never worked with characters before Playing Crazy, so that was a new thing for them. Because Dick Tracy, they were still people with just prosthetics on, so it was like just working with regular actors. But when you work with the characters, it's a slightly different situation. And Playing Crazy was probably the most demanding show for the characters, because it's one of the few times for the entire 12-15 minutes of that show, the characters are always on stage. If you watch the other character shows, they're there for a while. Like Mickey's Magical Map is a great example. Mickey's out there, and then he leaves, and then it's princesses, and then he comes back. There are times, partially due to the job of being a character, but they didn't know that, so they really worked the characters quite a bit, and not in a bad way. It was like a super fun show to do, but it was demanding, and they learned a lot from that. So when they did Mickey's Nutcracker, they decided to be edgy in a different way by using the different musical styles and using characters that don't always coalesce together at the resort. So it was kind of fun in that way, because we're like, oh my gosh, we're all mixing together where we're not supposed to. Like, it was like a little like subversive, like, look at what we're doing. Oh my gosh, it's Tigger and Mickey together at the same time.
I know. That's what I liked about it as a kid. I was like, hey, they're all friends. They all hang out. like just as a kid, you just don't know. But like you're like you see them together, you're like, oh yeah, they all hang out. It's kind of just this weird mixture of characters that I loved, and and that's kind of what made me has remembered it, because I was like, oh, that show with Roger Rabbit and Tigger and Mickey and everybody.
Super fun.
So when did you guys know that the show would be televised and be filmed for television?
I honestly don't know if that was brought up initially when we were auditioning, things like that. I don't recall that ever being mentioned. Kind of to your point, Disney Channel at that point, I think, was still subscriber. So it was, they were trying to come up with new content all the time. It was the early 90s. So that was kind of early on in a lot of stuff. I think we heard shortly after we got into rehearsals for the show that they were going to try to film it for Disney Channel. And so it wasn't, that was never sort of the carrot to make you do the show. It was like, hey, you're going to be televised. That came later. But when we heard about it, it was like super. Another great thing about the show was that all the casts, we were so supportive of each other, and we were so glad when people got opportunities and things like that. And that's genuine. Like, I'm not just saying that to say it. It's just,
it's amazing.
We all just really cared about the show. We all wanted it to be good, and we all supported each other, whatever we needed. So yeah, it was another reason why it was such a positive show. I mean, Christmas is my favorite time of the year anyway, so there was that for me personally. But outside of that, it was just like, oh yeah, and because it was just a holiday show, it was only maybe 3 months in the year that we would do anything. So it was like, oh, Mickey's Nutcracker, yay! So there was no opportunity to get for it to be old or like I'm over it or anything, Was
this the first time they took on like a Christmas show, or did they have a different Christmas show?
No. It's funny you mentioned that, because you just made me think. So I started at Carnation Plaza Gardens, which is now the Princess Fantasy Fair next to the Sleeping Beauty Castle. But before, it was a burger stand, and it still has the stage, right? The big band stage and all that stuff. But during the holidays, they would have a show with the Christmas. So it was one of the reindeers, moose.
Oh, okay.
In the parade in the old days, but I can't remember. It was Ralph the Christmas or something like that, and it was this 7-minute little tiny show where they would it was just this silly, bizarre, funny thing. And the reason why I laugh when I hear it, because the Chris Moose was always kind of an annoying character, and he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do within the context of the show. And so they go like, Chris Moose, and and then because I was there at Carnation and we saw this show 6 times a day, that kind of stuff just gets into your brain, and it never really leaves.
Well, of course, yeah.
I'll have to see if that's on the internet too, because I would love to see that
the Christmas.
I guess somebody just recorded that show.
Yeah. But that was, they did that for several years. I feel like that was an annual tradition. It was one of those things that the Disneyland just did for many years, and then it just kind of disappeared. It actually became a Beauty and the Beast holiday show for a while, and that was really fun to see. And then now,
so with the holiday shows run like they do now, like from November through December, or would it just start in December?
No, it'd be November to December. But back in those days, because now the Christmas holidays at the Disneyland Resort starts like November 1st. But back in those days, they actually held on to Christmas until, I think, Thanksgiving was the first day of the holidays back in those days. So it would be the end of November through December, and I think the first week of January, and then they shut it down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And something that I remember about Mickey's Nutcracker is that it kind of, to me, almost looked like what they had in the Christmas Fantasy Parade, especially like the baking float. Like I was like, that looks so much like the parade, and it looks like you're in the parade.
Did they mean for that, or
when
did
they were
they?
in like the baking?
I just think because we're in Candyland, they're trying to think of different themed ideas. So you have the candy makers, which I think Chip and Dale were a part of, and then you have Tigger was a different part. So I think it was more. We're now in a new city. What can we talk about that's related to candy? And that's what it was. So I think it was
funny.
coincidental that it was reminiscent of the parade. Yeah.
Or because didn't the new the Christmas Fantasy that came after, or was that doing it at the same time?
Well, Christmas Fantasy had been around for years. I think Christmas Fantasy goes all the way back to the 70s. So
okay, so it was running concurrent. Okay.
Yeah, I mean they've obviously they continue to update it every so often and add new floats and take things out, but the Christmas Fantasy Parade was around for a really, really long time. So it, I mean, could it have influenced the showrunners? Sure, but do I think it was a direct link to that? I don't think so. I don't think that was the goal.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt for a kid to make the connection from the show to the parade, because then they just want to go watch the parade, right?
It's all one thing. Yeah.
Synergy.
Did you have a favorite number in the show?
Well, any number I was in, obviously, it was my favorite. But I liked the Tigger number. And I can't remember the name of it, but
yeah. He was the sheriff. So.
Yeah.
He was the sheriff. So that was just fun hoedown, because they took the Tchaikovsky music and made it into kind of a hoedown.
Yeah.
That was super fun because I got to learn a different kind of dance. I'd never clogged or did anything like that before. So that was really fun.
Everybody bounce.
I mean, the Snowflake Queen, I think it's the showstopper of the entire show. That's just so brilliantly done. And I think of all the numbers outside of the end of the show, there was always huge applause for the Snow Queen number. I mean, it was a showstopper.
And though it storms in winter, passion warms in winter. Keep your heart from freezing. It's the season made for love.
So I think those two numbers were my favorite in the show.
I love it when she calls the exterminator at
Right.
the exterminator. And says, "We got a
And who
rat
is it on the other
problem."
line? It's Fat Cat. You know, like
Rats in the enchanted snowflake forest. We're just gonna have to see about that, won't we?
Hello, I can be exterminating. How may we help?
There are rats in the enchanted snowflake forest.
What kind of rats, madam?
Well, I only see one. He's a big, gray, ugly, and sensitive rat. Whoa!
it's like, yay!
Yes,
afternoon
there's so
character.
many little things in there. Like, oh my gosh, yes. And the tapping toy soldiers, I blows
Yeah.
my mind every time because
Oh, I forgot about that. That's right. That's
Well,
another
we're
good
tap
number.
dancers. We're tap dancers,
We are.
so that really was like growing up watching that. Really interesting. Like I would say, it influenced us to continue with tap, even though we were going to do it anyways, really. But I would say that
Well-
you didn't see tap very often in shows or anything like that at the time. So for this toy soldiers to be tap dancing, that was just great to see.
I gotta get up and find the beat. I gotta get up and use my feet. At midnight, only once a year, we moonlight at a new career. We come alive to jump and jive, so happy to be here.
Well, and their song was like so catchy, and they did their little toy soldier movements, and they were all women, pretty much, I think.
They were
Did
all
they
women.
want it to be women?
Yeah,
Did
that
they
was
want
on
it to be all
purpose.
women?
The idea, understand this is the early 90s, so we're not as woke as we are now. But
Right.
the concept was a little bit like they're sort of like the Rockettes in a way.
Okay.
So there was that
It felt like
aspect.
that.
Yeah. But at the same time, they were soldiers, so they did want to show strong women characters at the same time. And just so you know, there was a lot of conversation on whether we were going to use actual tap, the live tap sounds, or if we're going to pre-record it.
Yeah,
for the
I'm
televised
sure there
version,
was.
yeah, for the televised version, I think that was pre-recorded. But as I recall, they really tapped, whenever we did the show live.
I mean, even if they didn't have tap shoes on, their feet had to be doing the tap steps, which is what
can
we
clearly
closely
see.
looked at. Yeah, you can clearly see that they are tapping.
I can say for sure during rehearsals they completely tapped because again they weren't sure what they wanted to do. But if I recall correctly, I believe they actually did tap live. We had the live tap sounds when they did their numbers. They changed their shoes later because it's just loud, as you can imagine, when you walk around. But I would argue also they had one of the best entrances and exits of any of the characters in that particular show as well.
Oh yeah, coming out of the boxes, the presents.
Totally. Everything had to be precision perfect. And like you said, just kind of like the Rockettes, where everything was like, half a step this way and a third a step that way, and all that is so intricate and really hard to do, actually, with tap shoes and tapping and all that.
That was probably one of the most challenging numbers of all the numbers in the show. For that very reason, you have to be precise when you do that. Even if they decide to dub in the tap sounds, you still have to be on it. Yeah. And they all were so professional and they just nailed it, man. We were all, whenever we're in rehearsal, we clap for them. We're just like, dang, that was so cool.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. Not easy at all.
Well, and we just, just by watching the competition series on TV, like So You Think You Can Dance, they only introduce tap when they know they have tap dancers on the show. If nobody knows how to tap dance, they don't make it one of the dances that they have to learn because tap is so hard to pick up on. So that's really a testament to those ladies doing it like 5-6 times a week at Disneyland,
Yeah, and several shows a day. I mean, it's a grueling schedule to be a theme park. Whether it's Disney, I give props to the Universal folks and Knott's Berry Farm, all of those folks, and just understand that the live stage performers, if they're on stage, especially if they're singing and dancing, they're part of a separate theme park union. It's called AGVA, AGVA. And traditionally, they don't just perform for Disney, although a lot of them stay at Disney because it's a little bit regular. But they perform, like one of the people used to perform at Grinchmas for Universal and, all these kinds of things. So they kind of rotate around, and wherever there's a job, that's where they'll go. But they earn their keep, man. Every AGVA performer I ever met was super professional and they just earned it, man. And it's hard to keep that energy up every single show, even when the audience is kind of meh, and you're going to get those audiences every once in a while. They're just kind of, in fact, I'll tell you, I got a few stories, but one of the stories I'll tell you real quick is, so at the beginning of the show, because the narrator's there, they freeze to introduce each one of the characters. They freeze, and this is Minnie Mouse, and she is this, and this is whenever we froze, because the we're far enough away from the audience, and you'll never see this. I don't know if they do this in the video, probably not. They probably couldn't, but we would always talk to each other, tell jokes, and we're like, we should do something. And we would play tricks on people every once in a while. We'd like kind of untie somebody's shoes or, and it was just a fun joke, but it was a way for us to get around. But also we'd observe the audience. We're like, there's that guy again. He's there every show in the front row. And oh my gosh, look at that person over there. And we just talk about it. So whenever we're frozen, so anybody out there, if you saw the show live, if we're frozen, we're talking to each other. We're saying all kinds of stuff, It was really, really fun.
Nice.
Let me tell you, when I finally figured out that the people that we met in the beginning were the people that we met along the way, because I was really little when we first started watching this. So as I grew up, I started learning that the same people were who we met in the beginning. And then they put the Snowflake Queen and all of that. My mind was blown.
Well, it's the whole Wizard of Oz thing. Like I had a dream and you were there and you were there.
Yes.
Yeah, so like Ethel at the beginning is the Snowflake Queen and stuff. So that's kind of really brilliant. So does that go for the rest of the background dancers? Like they're in the end of the Candyland?
Yes. So everybody played double duty in that sense, where you were in the real world at the beginning and you had some part to play throughout once you got into Candyland, into the Nutcracker reality. So everybody had multiple parts in that sense. I think it made it fun for all of us too. It's just, we can be
but as a kid, like I didn't put that together until way older.
Well, that's fun too. It's great. It just makes our cast sound like twice as big. So that's great.
That's true.
So it did run for 91 and 92. Were you in both years?
I was in the entire run. It was a bummer when we couldn't continue. Generally, shows at the Disney parks are scheduled for 5 years. So we were, the Agvas are contracted players. So they were contracted for 5 years to do a show. Just in a simple way, there was some technical difficulties that happened after the second year. And we couldn't, for safety's sake, we couldn't continue past that second year. Just stuff happened, and I don't necessarily want to get into it here, but it was really tough. We played throughout the second year as best as we could under the circumstances, but they decided not to continue just because it wasn't the same show. I mean, we had groupies. That was kind of funny.
Oh, like the Mad Tea Party?
Oh, did you?
It's the same. Like it was like when DCA reopened with Buena Vista Street and they did the Newsies show. I remember the third day of that. That there was 3 young ladies who already knew the choreography and were lip syncing with the talent. And I'm like, this show is like 2 days old and they already knew everything. It was crazy. But we did have regulars for Mickey's Nutcracker. We had several people who would sit and it got kind of, and it still is that way for even Mickey's Magical Map, as I understand it, where there's a few guests who are like demanding, like, this is my seat, and it's kind of like, well, it's not. There's no reservations. But there was a few bar guests that were like that. They were we nicknamed them groupies in a fond way, and absolutely we loved having regulars, don't get me wrong. That was always fun because they knew when to clap and stuff, and they would cheer their favorite people and all this stuff. A lot of them would try to get backstage. I mean, it was like a real Broadway show. You have those people who just like, I want to meet the stars and stuff. And we just kind of didn't do that because we're a theme park, so it's not the same.
Right.
Right.
Again, like, for the most part, we never had any problems. I think there's only 1 or 2 who were kind of like rabid fans who kind of felt entitled to the show, like this is my show. But for the most part, it was pretty cool. In the end, Mickey's Nutcracker, I think, was a magical show. I think anybody who remembers it and sees it, because I talk to people every once in a while who just like, oh my gosh, what happened to Mickey's Nutcracker? So it did have an impact on people. Obviously, you saw it on video, and even with the quality of the video, which is kind of okay, you still enjoyed the show and felt how special it was. And I really, truly believe that it was a special show, which is why it's still my favorite show that I performed when I was in the entertainment department. and all I can do is just praise all the folks who were involved and all the people I got to work with. So I still have maintained friendships with some of those people since that time, and just extraordinary talent. Such a fun show, such a Disney and yet non-Disney show. Is very irreverent, and that makes it fun too, in its own kind of mischievous way. And it's a holiday show, so I think it really encompassed so many wonderful things that you can do in a creative way. So yeah, I'll always miss Mickey's Nutcracker, and I'm so glad people keep talking about it.
We
thank you so much.
And we thank you for talking with us today about it. It's going to be such a special show for us for going forward, and we want to thank you so much for talking to us about it today.
Hey, everybody. I know a good ending. Minnie, will you be my princess and stay with me here in Candyland?
This is the most wonderful Christmas of all. Yes, of course I'll stay with you, Nutcracker.
So where can our listeners find you, Drew?
Well, right now, outside of this podcast, which I'm really kind of honored to be on, right now, obviously with COVID and everything, we're not doing live tours right now. D23 is doing many sort of virtual events and things like that. I don't know if I'll be involved with some of those things. I was involved with the Halloween thing where we got to talk about the creepy D23 creepy classics that's on Disney Plus. So if you want to see me as a pirate, more or less, I'm on the Blackbeard's Ghost video, which was a lot of fun.
Okay.
And all I can say is, I mean, that was fun. And I got quite a few views on that. So that was great. I don't really know what's going to happen right now. There's been lots of talk about different kinds of things. So just keep your eyes and ears open for D23 things that are happening in the future. We'll see. But I do know the plan is ultimately to get the tours back, to start doing events again, probably towards the end of next year. When the studio allows people back onto the Burbank lot. Who knows what else I'll be doing just on my own. I've had a podcast myself in the past, Point of Drew, and I hope to get back into that at some point, and I'll keep you guys updated. I guess that's what I have to say.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to all of it.
Pomp and pageantry, we voice our jubilation. Now that a new princess has come to Candyland today, there's nothing sweeter than romantic celebrations. This is a brand new day for Candyland. Strike up the band in Candyland. A princess comes to
So that was so interesting, learning everything we ever wanted to know about Mickey's Nutcracker stage production. We want to give a great big thanks to Drew Hayashida for talking with us today. We also want to give a big shout out and thank you to Rob Dellinger for composing our theme song. To hear more of Rob's work and see where he will be playing next, please go to his website, alpharhythmkings.com.
We are part of the Skywalking Network, where you can also find other great shows like Talking Apes, classic Marvel Star Wars comics, the Max Effects podcast, Resilient Squadron podcast, and the flagship show, Skywalking Through Neverland. Sign up for the weekly Skywalking Network newsletter. The sign-up form is available in our show notes. You can check out all the Skywalking Network podcasts and articles at skywalkingthroughneverland.com.
You can follow us on our social media at Neverland Clubhouse Pod, at CLT8622, at Kelly Turkel on Instagram, at Cuddles25 on Twitter, and Kelly Turkel and Courtney Turkel on Facebook.
You can also find us in the Skywalking Through Neverland Facebook group. Just search Facebook for Skywalking Through Neverland group, request to join, and then answer the questions that pop up. Do it or we can't let you in. All right then. Second star to the right and straight on till morning. Join us for our next adventure from the Neverland Clubhouse. Happy holidays and Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year!